because right now it is time to bring in Arthur Schwartz, the food maven. Arthur joins us on a Monday morning at this time, and we talk about food, 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 food. Good morning, Arthur.
Very much alive
Yes.
in Brooklyn.
Very much.
So not dead yet.
Not yet.
So, in fact, I'm going for my second vaccination dose today.
Hey, I'm going for my first today.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, I'm not exactly excited about this. It's not going to change my life dramatically, but it's a milestone. Anyway, this past week in the New York Times food section, Melissa Clark did a pan. Is that how you say that word? P-A-E-N, pan? To spice blends. And she gave recipes for a bunch of spice blends, none of which I knew, and actually none of which I'm going to make. But it got me thinking about spices and herbs and what do I do, and I actually do have a few spice blends that I do. But in general, because of my Italian slant on cooking, I tend to not use a lot of herbs or spices in one dish, so I can't think of any spice blends that I know of in any part of Italy, north to south. On the other hand, here in the States, just thinking because I don't buy this, there is something called Italian seasoning, which is a bunch of dried herbs in a bottle. I never use that. I think most of it is the Italian seasoning. We're putting that in quotes because I would never say that. But these spice companies do, is largely oregano, dried oregano, which is one of my go-to herbs. In Italy, I have yet to find anybody cooking with fresh oregano. I'm sure there are people. But I always remember my friend Rita De Rosa, who is from Naples and still lives in Naples and has always lived in Naples. And she came to cook at her son Maurizio De Rosa's Neapolitan restaurant here in New York. And she saw fresh oregano in the supermarket and said, "Oh, I have to experiment with that." So I tell you, the end of the experiment was she took a piece of lamb, I guess it was. Was it? You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, it was tuna. Looked like lamb, red meat, and she swathed the piece of tuna in fresh oregano and put it in the refrigerator in a plastic bag overnight. And the point was that the oregano, the tuna, was imbued with the flavor of oregano. A little bit. We all decided it would have been better if she just used dried oregano. So anyway, those jars are just dried oregano and I guess some rosemary, sage. I'm not sure what. Anyway, I do use dried herbs. I don't want to poo-poo dried herbs. In fact, I dry my own herbs because I often buy a fresh herb for cooking, and then I can't use up the whole bunch or package or whatever the herb comes in. And what do you do with it? I mean, I just put it out on the counter or hang it, actually, from my pot rack here and let it dry. I love dried sage. I love fresh sage, too, but can't always have it. I love dried rosemary, and actually after that dries, I usually take the rosemary needles, leaves, whatever you call them, off the stems and put them in a jar just for storage. On the other hand, stems have a lot of flavor. So if you want to like cook something and put a bunch, you did this, you could take all the stems and maybe soak them in water for a few minutes and then put them under a chicken. Rosemary and chicken go very well together. But I couldn't think of any spice blends, although there are some that I use in my kitchen, but I'll get to that in a minute. They're not Italian dishes. And I always have fresh parsley in the house. You know, sometimes you just have to have a fresh herb, a green little something. The other day I wanted to make a tartar sauce, and I didn't have any fresh herb in the house. And I was thinking, you know what? I think for a change, I'm going to put dill in here. But the dill around the corner at my fancy supermarket was so ridiculously expensive, I decided, not that I can't afford it, but that I'm not spending that amount of money to have a little bit of dill in my tartar sauce. And dill does not dry well. In fact, I don't ever use dried dill, which you can buy in the you can buy in any store. I don't like dried dill, and dill doesn't keep very well in the refrigerator either. So if you can make a commitment to dill in the sense that, over a few days, figure out several things to do with your dill. But, that you got to think ahead. And another one like that is tarragon. Although I have successfully dried tarragon in my kitchen, I like fresh tarragon better. I don't mind dried tarragon, especially my own dried tarragon. But I love the word in Italian for tarragon. It's dragoncello. Dragoncello. Anyway, back to fresher. So parsley and dill are my main fresh herbs. We are not a cilantro household, but that's another one you can readily buy anywhere. And although I love mint, and I do use fresh mint, I love dried mint. And in fact, somebody mentioned to me the other day, it was so strange that this Middle Eastern person who does all this fresh food was then using dried mint when you could buy fresh mint or even have it in your garden. So you have to say, dried mint has a totally different flavor. By the way, when you buy it, dried mint in the Middle Eastern stores, which is what I do, in fact, this person was saying, it was dried mint from Sahadi on Atlantic Avenue. I said, well, I don't have to go to Atlantic Avenue even to buy dried mint from Sahadi. They sell it in a supermarket in my neighborhood. In any case, they're Palestinian owners of the supermarket, so they have a full array of Middle Eastern products. Not that we have that many Middle Easterners in the neighborhood, but I think people cook it. People love Middle Eastern food. In any case, you can buy this dried mint, and dried mint is something I always have on the shelf here. It comes in very useful, I find, especially when I need something other than parsley or dill or rose. The usual. I want to make something a little edgy, maybe. So last night, for instance, we had these ground lamb skewers. I bought ready-made. It's not something I usually buy ready-made, but I would make it myself. In fact, I'll give you a recipe in a few minutes. But these look good, and it was at Whole Foods, and they were on a serious sale. And I thought, let me try this. A semi-prepared food, so to speak. You take them home. So they have them in burger shape, and they have them on skewers. I bought them on skewers, but I ended up taking the skewers off because I don't have a barbecue to put them on. They would be fabulous on an open fire. But they were very good in a cast iron skillet as well, and I like the idea that I could roll them around and brown them out, get them crusty on all sides. And then to go with that, I made what I call smashed tomatoes. I bought a large quantity of cherry tomatoes, so I decided that was going to be our vegetable last night, but it also doubled as a sauce for these beautiful kebabs. And because these were ostensibly Moroccan, I decided to do the tomatoes with mint instead of my usual parsley. So what you do is you cook some garlic. Now, I had 3 cloves of garlic. I just bought this fresh garlic that's from, I'm sure, somewhere south of the border. I've got to find out. But it's the purple garlic that always comes into season about now, after all the California garlic is gone. Do not buy Chinese garlic. I don't want to go into it right now, but don't buy Chinese garlic. Anyway, so I smashed 3 cloves with my heel of my hand, not the smithereens, just to crack them open. And I put them in oil in a skillet and let them cook very, very slowly until they were soft, but not browned. And then I put in, and then I turned up the heat because I did this over low heat. Now I'm going to medium-high heat, if not high heat. And when the pan gets hot, but the garlic is still not going to brown, you put in recently washed tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, whole. Put them in the pan. It might be careful because they could spatter from the water and the heat of the oil. And immediately cover the pan and shake the pan like you're making popcorn. And keep use a mitt or a pot holder to hold the cover on while you shake the pan. And let them cook 4 or 5 minutes. You're going to hear them pop. Depending on the tomatoes, it could take as little as 3 or 4 minutes, but more like 4, or as much as 5 minutes. And then you can uncover the pan. The garlic will still not be colored because the tomatoes were wet to begin with. And now you can start smashing your tomatoes with the back of a wooden spoon. And go for the ones that are readily smashed. They'll create some liquid in the pan. And keep it bubbling. And when most of them are smashed, you're done. I put that in a bowl, but salt and pepper, of course, and dried mint, and a couple of pinches, good pinches, of dried mint. And I left the garlic in the pan. I know it was in big pieces, but we like that, and I'm sure you will too. And then I put that in a bowl, and I put the logs, I'll call them, of Moroccan kefta in the middle. Very good. Anyway, so I got to use my dried mint with smashed tomatoes. So spice blends. Now, as I said, I don't really use a lot of spice blends. However, there are a few that I like so much that I make I don't make it just necessarily for one batch of whatever it is I'm making. I make it for several batches, and then I just use it, when I want. And one of those is the spice blend that Leah Koenig, Koenig, Leah Koenig, has in a book. Leah is the number one Jewish food writer. I don't mean that she is Jewish and she's a food writer, but a writer about Jewish food. And this is called the Jewish Cookbook. I guess it is her most recent. Published by Phaidon. I think that's how you pronounce this publisher, P-H-A-I-D-O-N, famous for their exhaustive books on whatever subject. And you don't have to be Jewish to love this cookbook. It's one of my go-tos these days because it has so many recipes that I use, and then when I want, and then I love, and so when I want to cook something different, I often look in here to see what's up that I haven't tried yet. But this is a recipe that Leah gives for chicken shawarma. Shawarma is that vertical spit, Middle Eastern, I would have to say fast food. You go up to a stand, they carve off the shawarma from the spit, put it in a pita bread pocket, top it with some kind of salad or other, usually a chopped salad, and then some sauce. Could be hot sauce, could be a tahini-based sauce. And you can't really do this in your own kitchen. However, Leah has come up with not only a spice blend, but a method that works very well. And I have used it, by the way, in different ways. But this is the spice blend for Leah's chicken shawarma. 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, 2 teaspoons of sweet paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon ground turmeric. Now, aside here, if you don't keep ground turmeric in your pantry, your spice rack, wherever you're keeping your spices. We'll get to that in a second. You can leave it out. It gives the shawarma a really beautiful color, not a whole lot of flavor. And then Leah uses both garlic powder and onion powder, and she encouraged me to go out and buy the onion powder. I'm still hesitant. No, I'm not hesitant. I'm stubborn. I can't stand the smell of garlic powder, so I won't buy it. And in this dish, I leave out the garlic powder, but I do add garlic. So after the turmeric, you want, I would say, Leah calls for a quarter of a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and I do keep smoked paprika on the shelf here, but I like a little more than that. It gives a nice little smoky kick. If you don't love smoke, don't put in more than a quarter teaspoon. A half a teaspoon of salt, and at least a quarter of a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. So that's the spice blend, and I make it I triple these recipes. I would make triple this amount, and it's good enough. That triple this amount is enough for 6 pounds of chicken, but who makes 6 pounds of chicken? And by the way, boneless, skinless chicken thighs. So for 2 pounds of skinless, boneless chicken thighs, I use a third, that single mixture that I just read, and I add to that a nice, at least 1 large clove of garlic smashed, and a quarter of a cup, or a little more, of extra virgin olive oil, and I marinate the meat in that mixture. So it's the spice blend plus olive oil, and did I say salt? Yeah, there's salt in the spice blend. So, you can either, now Leah has you cutting the meat into pieces and then marinating it. I don't do that anymore. I did the first time I made the recipe, but I just do a whole skinless, boneless chicken thigh. And to the bag, add 1 large onion, and thinly sliced, and let that sit in the bag with the chicken and the garlic. You got it. And when you can leave it in there for an hour or 2 hours, or do it in the morning and come back in the evening. I wouldn't leave it overnight necessarily, because chicken, I don't know, it sort of breaks down too much for me. And that's it. So put that on a sheet pan and let it roast for it takes about a half an hour, I would say, at 425. And I like to put it on the top rack where it gets browner than it would in other oven placement. So about a half an hour, skinless, boneless thighs at 425. And now Leah does this, but it's not necessary, I find. But I must say it does add something. She then, and you can do that ahead, by the way. You can do the chicken, and then within a couple of hours, come back and or not, you could do it immediately too, and finish it off in a skillet, a hot skillet. Just pour the chicken and the onions in the skillet and let the edges of the chicken and the onions crisp up a bit. Stuff that in your pita. and then top it with a chopped salad. I like chopped salad. I make a lot of chopped salad, meaning a diced tomato, diced cucumber, sliced scallion, and my tahini dressing would be just tahini with lemon juice and water. That's all you need. I would say for a quarter of a cup of tahini, maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons of water plus the juice of a lemon, and then thin it out and salt, and drizzle that on top. Now, if you don't want to put it in a pita, it's delicious just that way, the shawarma with the chopped salad and tahini dressing. Now, I have other spice blends that I make, and I guess the one that I dream about the most, if you could say that, and I say this only because the meat it's meant to go on, I should buy some, is extremely fatty and rich. and so I have avoided it. But now that I'm on a keto diet and fatty and rich is a good thing, I may do this again. So it's a spice blend, a Central Asian spice blend for lamb breast. And I made this several times, not only using it for lamb breast, but also lamb shoulder, because it's hard to get lamb breast. Now, here in Brooklyn, we have a large Central Asian community, and there's a chain of supermarkets called Net Cost that serves both Central Asians, well, also all former Soviets shop at Net Cost. So one day I'm at Net Cost because one opened in what I never think of as a former Soviet neighborhood. And so I was curious, and I went, and sure enough, it was the same as the others. And I don't remember what I even bought there, but as I was leaving, I picked up their flyer, and on the back of the flyer, there were recipes, including this recipe for lamb breast, because lamb breast was on sale that day. So I went home, and I actually got a sensational lamb breast from Ursula, my butcher at Whole Foods. And it was, by the way, it was local lamb breast. It was from New Jersey. And I used this spice blend on it, and I knew this was going to be. This is very close to the spices they use at the Azerbaijani restaurant that I go to, which I'm always looking to reproduce, but they won't tell me what's in it. But this was pretty close. The only thing is I don't have a charcoal grill to grill my meat on. But in fact, lamb breast you want to be very slow cooked. But anyway, here's the rub. It is a rub. And lamb shoulder. You know what? I would even put this on a boned out, butterflied leg of lamb. So here's the rub: 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, 1 teaspoon dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander. Now, coriander is a spice and an herb. Coriander, when it's an herb, we call it cilantro, but it's the leafy part of the plant. Coriander is the seed. And if you've ever gardened and grown your own coriander, it bolts early in the season, and you get a nice supply of coriander seeds. So don't fret. Anyway, a teaspoon of and I do keep coriander seeds stay way longer than ground spices. So if you have a little spice grinder and you don't mind doing this, certain spices I grind, because I don't use that much coriander, so I do grind coriander to order, so to speak. And sometimes I throw it in the garden. 1 teaspoon of sweet paprika. I say sweet because, there is hot paprika. And there's smoked paprika, but that's not for this. Anyway, so the rub is 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of cumin, a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of dried oregano, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a teaspoon of ground coriander, which I think is the secret ingredient here, 1 teaspoon of sweet paprika, and add to that 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Rub this into your meat. If it is what do you call it? A lamb breast. You want to put the rubbed meat on a rack on a sheet pan, cover it with foil, and cook it at 300 degrees, no higher. You could even go 275 for about 2 hours. At which point it should be super tender and have rendered a lot of fat. Check it. If it hasn't, keep it in for a little longer. Then, when you're going to eat it, you want to put it in a 450-degree oven for 20 minutes, which is to say you can cook the slow-cook part ahead and just finish it off at the last minute with the 20 minutes or so, if it's starting from room temperature. Don't keep it out more than 2 hours or so. And that's it. It's really sensational, but as I said, very fatty, rich meat.
Nothing bad with fatty, rich meat, I can tell you that.
Well, if you're fat phobic, as I know plenty of people who still are, they would not eat this meat. I mean, I eat spare ribs because on the keto diet, I've discovered that the two best ratios of fat to protein, which is to say more fat than protein, are chicken wings and spare ribs. So unless the spare ribs have a sugary barbecue sauce on them, or even a sugary Asian sauce on them, they're a good combination. And by the way, that shawarma mixture, this is a sacrilege, but that shawarma mixture from the Jewish Cookbook by Leah Koenig is also very good on spare ribs. I haven't tried the Middle Eastern one, but that would probably be a very good one. These are both cuisines that do not eat pork. So, Jewish, and most Azerbaijanis are Muslims, so they don't eat pork either.
Well, the first time I was introduced to that stand-up spit was in Kingston, New York, where the diners all had. That's the only way I can eat pork, by the way, or meat like that I can digest, because it's sliced thin, but it's still juicy and everything like that. So.
Well, wait a minute. Pork can be extraordinarily juicy. You just haven't had the right pork, Marshall.
Probably.
So I'm not going to force you to eat pork, though. But when anybody tells me that, I remember this couple that came for private cooking lessons to me in Italy, and they said, "But we don't eat pork except for bacon."
Little asterisk there.
They didn't even say it that way. I think they said, "We don't eat pork, but we do love bacon," and we do love bacon. I don't know. It was more of an and than a but.
All right.
Arthur, I have so much more to say about spices and herbs, but we'll have to wait for another week.
All right. Well, I want you to have a good week, Arthur, and we'll speak to you next week.
And you too. Stay healthy these days.
All right. I'll think of you when I'm getting my shot today.
Yeah, and I'm getting my second shot today.
So I'll think of you at that time.
Yes, I will too. My appointment's at 11.
Mine's at 10:20. So.
Well, there you go. I'll be in the car trying to find a parking space.
All right, Arthur. Take care. Arthur Schwartz, the food maven, this morning here on The Breakfast Club on Robin Hood Radio. Underwriting support for Arthur Schwartz, the food maven, John Andrews Restaurant on the Hillsdale Road in South Egremont, 413-528-3467, and on the web, jarestaurant.com. Rubiners Cheesemongers and Grocers on Main Street in Great Barrington, 413-528-0488, rubiners.com. Hillsdale Home Chef, more information, 518-325-7000, hgshomechef.com.